Stephen Hazell is a former executive director of Sierra Club Canada and currently a senior counsel with EcoVision Law, a private law firm committed to sustainability, and a part-time environmental law professor at University of Ottawa. As I mentioned, he was executive director of Sierra Club Canada, and he was executive director of Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society as well. And in the mid-90s, Stephen led the team at the Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency that developed the regulations for the implementation of the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, which is now, of course, being overhauled in the current budget bill. Stephen holds a Master of Science degree in plant ecology from the University of Toronto and a law degree from Queen's University. He's written numerous scholarly articles, as well as a book called Canada versus the Environment, 1999, that came out, and it was about federal environmental assessment law and policy. And so he's our resident expert on Canadian environmental assessment law. So I'll turn it over to Stephen.
Merci, Celeste. Thanks to John and Sierra Club for putting this on. I think we're just supposed to keep our remarks very short, so I'm just going to focus on what the government is planning to do to the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. Now, Joe Oliver, a couple of weeks ago, said in the House of Commons that what this bill was all about was ensuring a robust environmental assessment process for major projects. That is false. This bill is basically, it fundamentally dismantles the entire system for studying major projects that require some federal decision. The way the current act works is projects that are triggered by some law or they happen on federal land or whatever, they require an environmental assessment as a matter of law. Environmental assessments go forward. Sometimes there are these big panel reviews like for Mackenzie Gas Project or Northern Enbridge, but and a lot of the times they're independent panel reviews, but the thing is that this is a law that requires environmental assessments. And when we started off back in the 1980s, we didn't have this law. That's what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that project would be subject to a federal law that required environmental assessment, so that we could move towards sustainability in our economy and in our communities. It's all about trying to get towards sustainability. And that's a word you will never hear this government use, is sustainability. They've abandoned it. They call their initiative the Responsible Resource Development. They don't talk about sustainability anymore. So, okay, what are they doing? They are basically taking the legal requirements out of the bill. So what we're getting is not so much a law with requirements to do assessments as a statute that enables the exercise of discretion by ministers and agencies. So it enables Harper and the PMO to pull the strings. If they don't want an environmental assessment for a tar sands project or a pipeline or a hydroelectric project, they can make sure that it doesn't happen. And that's really what this is. In my mind, this is what this is all about, is eliminating the legal requirements. So, as a result, what's going to happen? Right now, there's about 4,000 environmental assessments that happen every year at the federal level. Scott Vaughan, the parliamentary commissioner, said, I think yesterday, or maybe it was today, last night, that there will be 20 to 30 federal environmental assessments. So they're slashing the number of environmental assessments by orders of magnitude. What they're doing is putting blinders over their eyes and saying, we don't want to know about environmental stuff because we don't like those people that talk about environmental stuff. And that's basically what it's all about. It's really appalling. So there's no legal requirements. There's an abundance of discretion. And what they've done is they've said, okay, well, they have this, what they call a designated project list regulation. So in order for a project to be subject to environmental assessment, it has to be listed on this regulation. Of course, we don't know what's on the regulation right now. But even if a tar sands project does happen to be on this list, the government can still say, oh, well, we've reviewed it, and actually, we don't think there should be an environmental assessment. So there's discretion in the Act that allows them to avoid environmental assessment. So there's this sort of discretion that is right through the Act, and it basically destroys everything that the environmental community has been doing in environmental assessment over the past 20 years. One thing that is going to happen, though, they're introducing all sorts of new concepts. They're limiting participation by the public to so-called interested parties. We don't know what that will mean ultimately or how that will be interpreted, but they're limiting public participation, basically to keep out guys like Bennett, right? That's what they want to do. They don't want Bennett showing up at any of these panels. So they're changing that. They're limiting the sorts of environmental effects that can be studied by panels. And so that's a new definition. There's a number of new definitions and concepts that they've thrown in, and nobody's seen this bill until the budget was tabled a few weeks ago, and they're trying to have it passed within a couple of weeks. So there really isn't going to be nearly enough time to kind of figure out what it all means. But what will that mean if they go forward and they pass this bill in the next couple of weeks? What will it mean? It's going to mean a ton of litigation. There's going to be all sorts of opportunities for the Sierra Clubs of the world and the eco-justices, et cetera, to take the government to court on various points of law, because the bill is a mess. It was written in haste, and when that happens, it's inconsistent, incoherent, and that provides opportunities for lawsuits. So for all the proponents out there who think that this is going to be a nice, smooth ride to get their projects done, ain't necessarily so, because there's going to be all sorts of opportunities to get, and I think there's the environmental community and the First Nations communities and communities affected by projects are going to be motivated to do something about it, and they're going to have to go to the courts. So I will conclude just by telling you what I'll be proposing to the Finance Subcommittee this evening, and that is that we really have to stop this train right now. Take the bill, this Environmental Assessment Act bill, and move it over to the Environment Committee. Let them study it. I also suggest that we should have some sort of a multi-stakeholder process with folks from industry. National Roundtable? Good idea. That would, Elizabeth, that would be a good joke, actually. Yeah. Because they would be perfect for this. But give it to some folks who can really study it and think it through, and maybe actually recommend some. I mean, ideally, we like to see this thing die but assuming that it's not going to die, how can we kind of make a silk purse out of a sow's ear? I think that's how the expression goes. So that's what I'm going to be recommending. But there is one specific thing that they absolutely have to do if they're to have any credibility as parliamentarians, and that is, and I'm thinking about the parliamentarians at the table here too, is that the government, the Minister of Environment, has got to give us this list of projects. Because without that list of projects, it could be a null list. There could be nothing on the list. And then there really will be nothing to do under this new legislation. Absolutely nothing to do. There won't be 20 or 30 projects. There will be 0 projects. So we absolutely have to make sure that the Minister of Environment gives the committee this draft regulation, which lists all the projects that will be subject to the Act. So I'll make that suggestion as well. And that's something they might actually do, so I thought I might as well say that.